It's now time to take a look at news stories making headlines around the globe. We begin with news from the NEC, as President Bola Tinubu has again told state governors that the extra revenue from his economic reforms must now be felt directly by ordinary Nigerians. Making a special appearance at the National Economic Council meeting in Abuja, the president unveiled a grassroots stimulus program. He also called for closer collaboration with governors on his legacy projects and announced plans for a joint committee to handle environmental assessments and fast-track delivery. Our State House correspondent Adesua Omorwan reports.
It's the second time the president is attending the National Economic Council meeting, a body statutorily chaired by the vice president and made up of the nation's 36 state governors. His appearance comes barely a week after he told governors to wet the grass more, a metaphor for doing more to ease the complaints of Nigerians at the grassroots. And after several hours behind closed doors, Governor Hope Uzodinma of Imo State, flanked by other governors and government officials, explains the president's message and his plan to ensure extra revenue from his reforms is felt by ordinary Nigerians.
The president's memo or proposal to us this afternoon was in sync with our thinking on how best to strengthen the economic activities at the world level. So the whole idea is to identify, at least in each electoral ward, 1,000 individuals to make them economically active. And once that is achieved, it will resonate all over. Because as I speak to you, you must have been told that we are earning more money as a result of these policies. These more monies come to states in form of allocation, also comes to local government to strengthen their legacy projects.
The council endorsed the renewed Hope Ward Development Program, a joint effort of federal, state and local governments aimed at achieving double-digit growth and building a $1 trillion economy.
Today, in a very historic next step, Mr. President witnessed the presentation of a memo on renewed Hope Ward Development Program, which is a strategy to support the macroeconomic reforms being undertaken by the administration. Having stabilized the macroeconomy, the next step is to drill down development to the lowest levels so that we can, in the 8,809 wards of the country, simulate economic activity which we believe will generate employment, reduce poverty, enhance food security, and even enhance social protection.
The meeting also resolved to fast-track environmental assessments for Tinubu's legacy road projects, including the Lagos-Calabar Coastal Highway and the Sokoto-Badagry Superhighway, with a joint federal and state committee set up to clear bottlenecks. And to ease land and survey processes, the Office of the Surveyor General has been moved to the presidency. In other development, the council turned to flood preparedness, directing fresh funding to the National Emergency Management Agency, key ministries, and state emergency agencies to reduce the annual toll of floods.
What the National Economic Council resolved was that, there should be strengthening of the state emergency management agencies, but at the same time, there should also be funding. And this year, we are mandated to once again provide that funding to support in a meaningful and tangible way the flood prevention efforts.
With these steps in place, all attention now shifts to state governors as President Tinubu leans on the subnationals to turn his economic reforms into real gains for ordinary Nigerians. Adesua Omorwan, Arise News.
Right, now the Federal Executive Council has approved projects running into trillions of naira at its resumed sitting. From a total rebuild of Lagos International Airport to major roads and rural solar power projects. State House correspondent Adesua Omorwan reports.
Nigeria's busiest airport is set for its first total modernization in decades. The Lagos Murtala Mohammed International Airport Terminal 1 will be stripped to its frame. This was part of the decisions reached at Thursday's session of the Federal Executive Council meeting.
This is not the patchwork we used to do before, where we just do some patchwork in some sections and all of that. The total rehabilitation will mean, just for transparency, to let the public know that we are going to strip it down to only the carcass and then do the complete M&E again, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, everything, to have a brand new airport. The completion period is 22 months. And the total cost will come up to 712 billion, 258 million, 565,482 naira, 18 kobo.
Terminal 2 will be expanded and runways in Lagos, Kano and Port Harcourt upgraded with Category 2 landing lights to cut delays during Harmattan haze. The Lagos airport will also get a 14-kilometer security fence with CCTV and intruder alerts. Away from aviation, the government says reconstruction is underway on the collapsed Kefi flyover in Nasarawa State, where 3 people died in July. Families have been compensated, and one carriageway remains closed for repairs. The Minister of Works adds that 360 roads were completed last year, and new approvals cover strategic corridors like the Lagos-Calabar Coastal Highway, Abuja-Kano Expressway, and Sokoto-Badagry Superhighway projects worth trillions of naira. He says no part of the country has been left behind.
We always, and any time, any day, stage a debate with anybody that wants to darken council without knowledge in terms of roads and bridges infrastructure. The president has done extremely very, very well. And I'm very, very grateful to him for what the selfless services is rendering to our nation. Because I've always said that when a road is disconnected, you can't move from one state to the other. It's tantamount to being in prison because your movement is restricted. But with this project, being done, the GDP of states are being improved upon. The 85% of the first section of Lagos-Calabar Coastal Highway, I know what has happened to the GDP of Lagos, even though we've not totally deployed on that route. And that's why I maintain that these 4 legacy projects are investments. They are not just road construction.
The Power Ministry also secured over 200 billion naira for solar mini-grids to power 8 universities, a teaching hospital, and rural farm clusters.
The first is actually the approval of the award of contracts for the engineering, procurement, and construction services for energizing education program under the special intervention of the Renewed Hope Infrastructure Development Funding for the Rural Electrification Agency, which is targeted at relieving our educational institutions and teaching hospitals of the burden of huge energy costs being social institutions, while also providing reliable and good quality electricity across our higher institutions of learning and tertiary teaching hospitals.
The Council also approved the National Industrial Relations Policy 2025. It aims to reduce industrial action, improve workplace dialogue, and align Nigeria with International Labour Organization standards. From the Presidential Villa, Adesua Omoruan, Arise News.
All right, we conclude with the oil and gas sector as the Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission, the NUPRC, yesterday continued its search for higher crude oil output in Nigeria with a renewed focus on ways to unlock about 810,000 barrels per day daily output from the country's current 6.8 billion deep offshore oil reserves. To this end, the upstream oil regulator engaged key oil producers, mostly comprising international oil companies in Abuja, on a topic titled Harnessing the Potential of Shallow and Deepwater Oil and Gas Accumulations Through Cluster Nodal Development in Nigeria. While speaking at the event, the Commission's Chief Executive, Benga Komolafe, noted that if followed through diligently, the planned initiative has the potential to maximize the benefits of Nigeria's hydrocarbons resources and transform deep water oil and gas development in Nigeria. He listed recent moves by the Commission to raise oil and gas output, including the incremental oil and gas production through the restoration of shut-in strings, Project 1 million BPD, strategic engagement on operators' funding and rigs, heavy crude oil development, among others. Of course, we continue to hope that we can push up our output numbers, and whatever efforts are being made in that direction are hugely welcomed. Dr. Abati.
Okay, let me start with the plan to make 8.8 million available to 8,809 wards across the country. And the whole objective, as articulated, is that the whole idea is to make sure that in line with Chapter 2 of the Constitution, that development goes all the way to the grassroots. So the government now has a renewed hope. What development strategy? Well, to express the, hope, the objective, that people in the various wards, 8,809 wards, deserve also, to have economic activity, particularly in the areas of rural agriculture and production. It's in itself a good idea. But I hope that where the issue will be in terms of the management of the process. How will these persons who will benefit be identified? 1,000 were told in the smaller wards, 2,000 persons in the bigger wards. Now, who is going to manage it? And we also need to know the details, because let this not be a strategy. We have been through this route before, where government introduces a scheme that is supposed to be for the benefit of the people, and on the surface of it, it will look like a good idea, but it will now be used as a political tool for political mobilization. That is where the danger is. This must not become a program for APC faithful in the local governments, in the rural areas. But we've been told that, there's going to be a collaboration at the federal level, at the state level, and the local government level. What is important is that this does not become, a political, initiative. They want to build a $1 trillion economy by the year 2030. And the argument is that this is part of the beginning step in this regard. Now, as for NEC meeting is notorious, the Federal Executive Council meeting, rather. It's notorious for award of contracts, expression of initiatives. The number one point to note is that while all of this on paper may appear attractive, the question is, are those projects as outlined going to be cash-backed? Where is the money going to come from? Over 900 billion, in the aviation sector. That's, I think, in Naira, right? And out of that, about 712 billion Naira will be spent on the Murtala Mohammed International Airport in Lagos alone. We're told that Terminal 1 will be stripped down and completely reconstructed. And that Terminal 2, the apron, will be expanded, access road to it will be sorted out, and then this domestic terminal, what they call the GAT terminal in Lagos, will also have metal fence and a lot of technology and all of that. In addition to that, the airport in Port Harcourt will have a runway upgrade. The airport in Kano, the Malamameno Kano International Airport, will also be upgraded. Yeah, the airport is the first contact of a traveler with a country. And we dare say that our airports are in a very poor state. When you get to the Murtala Mohammed Airport, to cite a close example, yes, they've tried to upgrade parts of it where when you come in, you just use your passport. Coming out of the airport is very easy. So there's been some level of upgrade. and all of that, then maybe your luggage will come out, earlier. But truly, these airports, whether in Port Harcourt or in Lagos, they need to be upgraded. Having an airport where the toilets don't work or the elevator does not work, they will say, oh, it's been out of order. Or the escalator, such as the one at the Murtala Mohammed International Airport in Abuja, does not work. I think it's very embarrassing. So again, at the level of principle, it's a good idea, to say we want to upgrade the airport. But is there the commitment, the will to provide the money? And where is that money going to come from? Because 900 billion plus is a lot of resources. Maybe they're trying to provide a justification for additional borrowing. And that takes me to the road projects, which Minister Dave Imai, the Minister of Works, was talking about. The Kefi flyover and other projects all over the country. Yes, this government has made the rehabilitation, the reconstruction of new roads part of its priority. Transportation across the country being a major problem. So focusing on the roads, making it easier for Nigerians to move around is very important. However, it's a task that is daunting. The government itself had applied with regard to the Lagos-Calabar Expressway, Coastal Highway, it is called, about 347, million naira. Now, 47 million is part of the variation. We're told the money had increased from 700 to 47. Again, where is the money? We keep borrowing to do all of this. But in terms of deliverables, it's not just about policy, it's also about outcome. And in the list that was provided by the Honorable Minister of Works, I look for one road that we have been talking about on this program. That is the the Benin-Warri bypass, on which we have had, some concerned citizens raising questions and saying these roads are in a bad state. Now that road is not included. Some other critical roads in the southeast are also not included in that list. But this may be a beginning in terms of prioritization. I think that is the basis of the concern of Nigerians. As for NUPRC, the regulatory agency in charge of the upstream, saying that deep offshore producers and the IOCs can do a lot more than they are doing already, that the country has the capacity to produce up to 6.8 billion, that the country has 6.8 billion deep offshore reserves, but we are not meeting that, and that we can do up to 810,000 daily output from the country. The question is the federal government committed to playing its part? The question is, how? We're told that a development committee has been put in place. That development committee, we would like to know what the details are. Now, we've been told that there will be incentives. What is the nature of those incentives? Because this is not the first time we're told that, reforms upstream would help, revenue, will help to upgrade infrastructure, improve on commitment between Nigeria and the IOCs. But the thing is that there are questions that have not been answered, because this is not the first time we are hearing this kind of commitment. But there was also some reference to petroleum profit tax, which I think is now about 50%. Now that petroleum profit tax, if they are able to get it, should be used constructively, particularly to develop agriculture, which is one of the identified areas. But, Nigeria is fond of making promises and drawing plans. After all, one Minister of State for Petroleum told us that, we will reach so barrels magically within a month or two. That has not happened. So giving empty promises will not serve the purpose. So the taste of the pudding, they say, is in the pudding. All these projects, policy outlays that have been, outlined, it is when we see the effect, because the lowest common denominator is the impact on the economy, is also the effect on the ordinary people of Nigeria, either at the world level or within the oil and gas system, or in terms of infrastructure, which is also being focused upon. For example, the solar power energy that they say they will provide in the universities. 8 pilot universities, including the University of Maiduguri, University of Calabar, and other universities. University of Abuja is also included in that list. I think it's scandalous that there will be no electricity in Nigerian universities. So all of these things is when we see the effect that we would, be able to assess. At the moment, these are expressions of, plans, of something on paper for now.
Absolutely. The deliverables are what we are all anticipating and what we look forward to. However, let's look at how this road to these very ambitious projects is going to be achieved, or is hoped to be achieved. This is all said to be done under the Renewed Hope Infrastructure Fund. Now, if you go back to the creation of this fund at the beginning of last year, it was reported that at the time Nigeria had over 870 billion of an infrastructure gap, and that there was a need to invest to over $35 billion per year until 2040 for Nigeria to be able to address its infrastructure deficit. However, in the previous administration, President Muhammadu Buhari had created his own Presidential Infrastructure Development Fund. Now, this was housed in the National Sovereign Wealth Authority and was the initiative that was used to spearhead the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, the second Niger Bridge, to name a couple of examples. However, they say that this system had so many bottlenecks and it was not as efficient and effective as it could have been because, number one, it was in the National Sovereign Wealth Authority, and number two, it was focused on public sector spending. So the argument was that this created too many bottlenecks. So what did this administration do? They now moved it into the presidency and expanded it, and it now became what we know as the Renewed Hope Infrastructure Fund. So what are the key changes besides moving it from the National Sovereign Wealth Authority into the presidency? Well, one of the biggest changes we are seeing is that they argue that this particular fund will not be public sector led with regards to borrowing, the government borrowing in order to finance it. They're saying that it's supposed to be a mix of private capital, equity, capital markets, and so forth, insurance companies, and so forth, that are supposed to be different sources of the funding. However, our first question when we see the announcement of 3 trillion naira in projects is, what is the breakdown of the funding? Where is this money coming from? How many of these projects are private partnerships? How much are in private investment, international investment? Let's know, because this is the concern with moving such a fund into the president's office, is that you now take away some of the checks and balances that would exist and some of the transparency that exists with it being in any other arm of the agency. Will the National Assembly be able to query this particular fund? Who is going to be able to ask and sit down and ask for accountability as to how each naira and kobo has been spent? These are some of the key questions that one wants to ask. Now, on the rehabilitation of airports, I think that's a fantastic initiative. Anybody would argue that this is a good way to go. However, when we look at the Murtala Mohammed International Airport here in Lagos, of course, we know that there's been some development in recent years. The same contractor will be used, which is CCEC, the China Civil Engineering Construction Company. Now, in the past, if you remember, there were some issues that continued to crop up. Almost 10 years ago, there was, spats of protests and so forth around issues of unfair labor practices. So our appeal is to ensure that whichever regulatory authority is in charge of this ensures that the Nigerians who are employed to work on these projects, especially the airport project, are paid fairly. They are paid on time. In the past, there were reports of people having to work for 30 days non-stop without a day off and then not really being paid what they thought was fair. So the salaries, the wages have to be competitive for the people who will be engaged in this. Let's not repeat the cycle that we've seen happen in the past. Now we quickly move to the next approval of 8.8 million beneficiaries that will enjoy some cash transfer from the government. It said that the government will look at economically active people. So again, as Dr. Abati asked, how are we going to discern between who is economically active and who is not? What's the criteria? This administration has already undergone through a process of cash transfer. And we already know that the World Bank and the IMF have come and said that, well, the last 25,000 naira that was supposed to go to 15 million households was only 30% effective. It was only implemented to just about 5 million households as opposed to the aspiration of 15 million. What were the issues? Issues around NIN, BVN, and so forth. Have these issues been resolved before we embark on another similar policy? This is the question that we asked, because last time we asked about the cash transfers to the 15 million households, they said they were still ironing out issues around NIN and BVN. Now we've taken a number of 8.8 million people. How are we going to know that the issues that have caused bottlenecks in the past have been ironed out? So these are some of the questions around accountability. Now, when you have such an initiative that speaks directly to the grassroots, it only takes us back to the issue of local government autonomy. Why is this elephant in the room not being identified and addressed? Because we now have this new system, and the governors are the ones who are being given the authority to take charge over this process of wetting the grassroots, as it is being called. But we're not hearing of local government autonomy. The Supreme Court ruling, which is just sitting and gathering dust somewhere, and we seem to be moving on. And whenever we ask questions, we are told that there are some structural issues that are being rectified. This would have been an initiative that needed to be spearheaded by the local governments directly as they exercise their autonomy, because they're the ones who directly oversee the wards. Now, handing it over to governors, leaves a lot to be desired and leads us to question many things about what the real incentive around this is. Of course, we want to stimulate economic development. We want people to have access to grants and credit and whatever capital they can to boost their economic activities. However, due process is all that we ask for. Transparency, accountability, I think, is the key theme in both the 3 trillion naira worth of projects, aviation, road projects, and so forth that we've seen from FEC, and the 8.8 million individuals, economically active individuals who are supposed to benefit from the new approvals from NEC. And of course, this is all happening as moves are being made to bring the nurses' strike to an end. But some of the nurses are saying that their demands are largely not even financial, that they are looking at administrative issues that are making their lives difficult. However, we do hope that this strike that has caused untold suffering and debilitated our health infrastructure across the country, I do hope that it can be brought to an end very quickly.
Just before we go, there is a rejoinder to everything that has been said about particularly the Benin Bypass Road. And the statement I got says, the Benin Bypass Road is on palliative contract with CCECC. I visited site last 3 weeks and directed contractor to move to the worst section to rehabilitate. I will also pass the coastal highway through that corridor for a more permanent pavement. On Southeast roads, Enugu-Onitsha Road is there by CBC Company, and 45 billion naira also released yesterday. Please kindly correct. Well, this is directly from the Minister of Works himself, Minister Dave Umahi. So people who are concerned about Benin Bypass Road, this is the minister himself saying action is being taken. But in the newspaper report, I didn't see part of this in the list. And as for the concession of airports that Minister of Aviation says that are not, profitable, and that only Kano, Murtala Mohammed, and Port Harcourt are viable. Well, Bismarck Rewane had pointed out before that most of these airports are not, in fact, profitable. So the minister now has confirmed what Mr. Bismarck Rewane has said. But when they are doing the concessioning, which is also in itself a major problem in this environment since the Obasanjo years, we hope that it will not be only APC members that will get the concession, and that the process of concessioning will be transparent and accountable, and the Nigerian people will be properly informed.